Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about something that might hit a little too close to home. That weird, lingering feeling that no matter what you do, you're still not enough. You wake up, look in the mirror, and something's just off. It's not just your bed hair or the toothpaste smudge on your shirt. It's deeper, quieter, meaner. It whispers, you should be more. You should be more successful, more attractive, more articulate, more together. You should have better skin, a better job, a better story to tell at brunch. Even on days when you do accomplish something, that voice doesn't say, well done. It says, you could have done more. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know who's awake with me right now, navigating this together. Now, let's get comfortable, and let's get started today. There's this thing I do every morning that absolutely ruins my day. It's innocent on the surface. I look in the mirror. That's it. That's the whole crime. But I don't just look. I scan. I assess. I hunt for flaws. I tilt my head, stretch my jaw, frown at the bags under my eyes, and immediately jump to judging the kind of person who might show up to the world wearing this face. That mirror? It's not reflecting glass. It's reflecting 100 unspoken standards I didn't even realize I adopted. Who decided your nose is too wide, your stomach too soft, your resume too short? You didn't. Most of the time, you're not reacting to who you really are. You're reacting to a collection of distorted images, social expectations, filtered influencers, random offhand comments from a middle school gym teacher that somehow still live rent-free in your nervous system. The first mirrors weren't made from glass. They were polished obsidian used by ancient civilizations. Imagine the kind of distorted reflection that gives you. But you'd still believe it, wouldn't you? Just like we believe every warped story our mind tells us now. The human brain, brilliant as it is, has this maddening habit called confirmation bias. Basically, your brain looks for evidence to support what it already believes to be true. If you think you're inadequate, guess what? You'll subconsciously collect proof all day long. Didn't get a text back? Inadequate. Made a typo? Inadequate. Forgot your keys? Failure. You're out here building a case against yourself like a trial you never signed up for. And then, you scroll. The modern mirror isn't in your bathroom anymore. It's in your phone. Swipe left. Tap twice. Everyone's glowing. Everyone's thriving. Everyone's hitting milestones you didn't even realize you were behind on. Their 6 a.m. workout. Their meal prep salmon bowls. Their just bought my dream house at 26 moment. Meanwhile, you're eating cold cereal out of a mug wondering if dry shampoo counts as hygiene. Let's just admit it. Comparison is the thief of joy, but we keep inviting it over like it's our emotional support raccoon. And there's an open academic debate about this too. Is social media making us more connected or just more insecure? Some argue it fosters community. Others say it's an empathy minefield. All I know is, every time I think I'm doing okay, someone online finds a way to look 10 times better doing half as much. But here's the thing we rarely say out loud. Inadequacy isn't just about envy. It's about fear. Fear that if people saw the real you, the one without the filtered highlight reel, they'd walk away. That if you stopped performing, you'd stop being loved. And that fear is ancient. It's survival coded. See, your brain evolved to keep you in the tribe. Thousands of years ago, rejection wasn't just emotionally inconvenient, it was fatal. You needed the group to survive. So now, even in the age of Uber Eats and Bluetooth toothbrushes, your brain still reacts to judgment like it's a saber-toothed tiger lurking behind a rejection email. And your morning mirror? It becomes the judge, jury, and executioner of your worth before you even sip your coffee. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying self-awareness is bad. But there's a difference between observation and obsession. Between noticing your flaws and building a cathedral of shame around them. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if we looked in the mirror and asked different questions. Not, what do I need to fix? But what can I be kind to today? I tried it once, and it felt weird. Like wearing socks on your hands weird. But slowly, it started shifting something. Human intelligence is a funny thing. We're capable of solving quantum equations, writing symphonies, sending robots to Mars, and yet, we can't look in the mirror without flinching. That's not a failure of character. That's a system error. So here's your quiet permission slip. The mirror lies sometimes. The voice in your head isn't always yours. And you are allowed to start the day without launching a mental trial about your adequacy. Because you're not behind. You're not broken. You're just a human in progress. And that's more than enough. You ever wonder when it all started? Like really started? I don't mean the day you first noticed the curve of your nose or the C+ on your math test. I mean the quiet moment when your brain decided, without asking your permission, I am not enough. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It usually sneaks in during childhood, when you're sitting cross-legged on some weird carpet in elementary school, watching someone else get picked first for kickball, or when the teacher calls on someone else for the third time and tells them how smart they are. You don't know it then, but your little brain is running a silent equation. Attention equals worth. Praise equals safety. Being perfect equals being wanted. And if you don't get picked? Well then, clearly, you must not be enough. Human intelligence at that stage is like wet clay, malleable, hungry to make sense of the world, eager to survive. We're wired to interpret everything as either acceptance or rejection, love or danger. And the brain? It doesn't forget those equations. Even when you're older and taller and paying taxes and pretending to understand your insurance policy, that original script is still running somewhere in the background like a pop-up ad you can't close. One of mine was, "You're only valuable if you're useful." That belief didn't come out of thin air. It came from a moment I barely remember, me, age 6, overhearing my parents say, "She's so helpful, she never causes trouble." At the time, it felt like a compliment. A gold sticker on my soul. But later? It became a prison. Because I learned to make myself smaller so others wouldn't worry. To overfunction. To apologize for my needs. And when I couldn't help or solve or support, when I was just a messy, tired, average person, I felt like I didn't deserve love. That's the twisted magic of childhood conditioning. You don't just learn what to think. You learn who you are in relation to other people's moods, needs, and standards. There's actually a term for this, conditional regard. It's when affection, praise, or approval is only given when a child meets certain expectations. And over time, that child starts believing they are only lovable when performing. You can grow up in a nice home, with no dramatic trauma, and still internalize 100 small moments that taught you your worth was fragile. Open academic debate. Some psychologists argue that attachment wounds require severe incidents to be valid. Others say micro-wounds, chronic invalidation, subtle favoritism, even absence of attunement, can create just as lasting an imprint. I tend to lean toward the second camp. Because the older I get, the more I realize my worst inner critic doesn't sound like a monster, it sounds like me, when I'm trying to be safe. And safety? It's one of the strongest forces behind the mask of inadequacy. Let me explain. When we feel not enough, what we really feel is unsafe in who we are. We've learned, somewhere along the way, that being ourselves gets us less love, less protection, less attention. So we adapt. We overachieve. We undershare. We become chameleons. We walk into rooms and immediately try to read the temperature, not because we're thoughtful, but because we're terrified of being the wrong version of ourselves. This is emotional shapeshifting, and no, it's not a superpower. It's exhausting. It's what happens when your brain says, "Hide the real you or you'll lose everything." I remember sitting in a college class once, watching everyone raise their hands to debate some philosophical theory. I had thoughts. Strong ones, actually. But I didn't speak up. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I was afraid that if I got it wrong, I'd confirm what I already believed about myself, that I wasn't smart enough to belong here. So I stayed quiet. smiled politely, nodded like a bobblehead. After class, someone turned to me and said, "You're so chill." I smiled back. But inside? I was screaming. Octopuses can change their skin texture as well as color to blend in with their environment. It's an impressive, almost magical biological function. But they're also solitary and short-lived. Beautiful, brilliant, and burned out by nature. Sound familiar? We do the same. Emotionally. We blend in so well, we forget what we looked like before we started hiding. And what's worse? We get good at it. We become high-functioning, polite, adaptable adults who can mimic confidence, charm, even leadership. But inside? There's still that tiny kid who just wants someone to say, "You don't have to earn love." So what do? Well, first, we stop pretending that this isn't affecting us. That's the trap. You start thinking, this is just who I am. I'm sensitive. I'm needy. I'm weird. No. You're not weird. You're responding to your original programming. And second, we start getting curious. Not about how to fix ourselves, but about where these beliefs came from. Who told you that needing help made you weak? Who taught you that crying made you dramatic? Who convinced you that a B+ was a failure? Because I'll tell you this much, no kid is born feeling inadequate. They learn it. And if it's learned, it can be unlearned. But only if we're willing to go back to those early rooms. Those quiet disappointments. Those offhand comments. Those moments we were too young to process, but old enough to remember. And this time? We don't go back to judge. We go back to understand. Because the root of inadequacy isn't shame. It's misunderstanding. And you, my friend, are not broken. You're just early in the healing. There was a boy in my 6th grade class who could solve a Rubik's Cube in under 30 seconds. His fingers moved so fast it looked fake, like sleight of hand magic, but with plastic squares and mathematical vengeance. We all watched in awe. Some clapped. One kid asked to touch the cube, like it might bless him with sudden IQ points. Me? I just sat there wondering if that meant I was officially the dumb one. See, no one said it. But the air in that room changed. Teachers gravitated toward him. He got extra credit. I stopped raising my hand. Why? Because somewhere along the line, schools stopped being a place to explore, and started being a stage for sorting. You're either smart or average. You either get it or you're falling behind. The real test wasn't about knowledge. It was about belonging. And for many of us, that's the first place inadequacy got branded on our identity. School systems weren't designed to help you feel seen. They were designed to create standardization. Human intelligence, however, is anything but standard. There are at least 8 recognized types of intelligence: logical, mathematical, linguistic, spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. But in most school systems, only the first 2 get the spotlight. So if you're a creative, emotional, intuitive kid who can read people like novels but can't do long division without a full panic attack, the message is clear. You're not smart. Which then morphs into you're not enough. This is how it starts. We mistake the kind of intelligence that school rewards for the only kind that matters. And then we spend our lives trying to win a game we were never built to play. There's an open academic debate about how early academic tracking harms or helps children. Some educators argue that early sorting helps tailor curriculum. Others argue it causes lasting psychological damage and creates a fixed mindset, where kids start believing their current level of performance defines their lifelong potential. I'm not a policy expert, but I do know how it feels. I know what it's like to think, I'm bad at math, and then avoid every opportunity to prove otherwise. I know what it's like to think, I'm not a leader, and then step back even when I have ideas. I know what it's like to see a grade and let it speak louder than my entire personality. That's the problem. We start outsourcing our identity to external measurements. Test scores. GPAs. Dean's List. Most likely to succeed. honors society invites. And when we don't get them, it doesn't just feel like we failed. It feels like we are a failure. The SAT was originally developed by a eugenicist. Yup, the standardized test that makes kids cry in kitchens and believe they'll never get into college? That one. Its origins had more to do with filtering populations than discovering potential. Makes you rethink how much power we give to metrics that were never built to see the full you. Now look, I'm not saying throw out all achievement. Striving is human. Learning is beautiful. But here's the danger. When you tie your worth to performance, you create a fragile self-esteem system. One that can crash with a single bad day, bad grade, or bad mood. I remember turning in a short story once, heart racing, because for once I actually liked what I wrote. The teacher handed it back with a red mark across the title and wrote, "Too informal. Be more academic." I cried. Not because of the critique, but because I let one adult's opinion rewrite my entire relationship with writing, for almost a decade. That's the thing about inadequacy. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it wears a red pen and whispers, "Not quite." But you want to know the weirdest part? Sometimes, when you do achieve, the grades, the job, the promotion, you don't feel relief. You feel nothing. Or worse, panic. Because now the bar is higher. And the voice shifts again. "You got lucky. Don't mess it up." This is imposter syndrome, and it disproportionately affects high achievers. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to question whether you belong. Irony's cruel like that. And the scariest part? The people who seem most confident, the loud ones, the polished ones, the ones giving keynote speeches on grit and success, often carry the deepest wounds of inadequacy. Because they were told from a young age they were gifted. And now they live in fear of disappointing the title. So what do we do? Well, for starters, we begin to separate achievement from identity. You are not your grade. You are not your productivity. You are not your LinkedIn headline or college admission letter or whether you ever figured out calculus. You are not the opinion of one teacher in 10th grade. You are you. And no one, not even a board-certified expert with a clipboard and a fancy tie, can measure that with a rubric. It's time to redefine intelligence. It's time to let yourself be whole, not ranked. And it's okay if that feels unnatural at first. It should. Because if you've spent your life trying to measure up, it takes time to stop measuring altogether. Here's something that helped me. Instead of asking, "Am I good enough?" ask, "Am I growing into more of who I am?" That question doesn't need a gold star. It just needs honesty. And that's where real worth begins. You ever notice how your brain seems to zero in on the one thing going wrong in a sea of okay things? Like you could have 25 decent moments in a day, but your mind laser focuses on that awkward comment you made in the elevator or the one email you forgot to respond to. That's not just you being neurotic. That's evolution. See, our brains are wired for survival, not serenity. And that wiring? It's old. Like before plumbing, old. Back then, noticing threats kept you alive. The rustle in the bushes? Might have been a tiger. Or an aggressive goose. Either way, better to overreact than end up as lunch. This is called the negativity bias, a hardwired tendency to focus more on what's wrong than what's right. So when you wonder why you remember your boss's disapproval more than their praise, or why a stranger's side-eye haunts you longer than your friend's compliment, that's why. Your brain is literally doing its job. But in today's world, where most of us aren't dodging predators on our way to work, unless you count potholes or group projects, that same bias starts turning inward. You become the threat your brain is trying to monitor. Suddenly, your own thoughts are the enemy. And let me tell you, there's no tiger scarier than the voice in your head whispering, "You're not doing enough." Human intelligence allows us to reflect, plan, and reason. But it also allows us to catastrophize, compare, and compulsively analyze why that person left you on read. I once spent 4 hours wondering if the way I said, "thanks," in a Slack message sounded passive-aggressive. 4 hours. That's a third of a workday. for a two-syllable word. You think that's absurd? It is. But it's also so human it hurts. We're constantly scanning, not just for danger but for ways to belong. And when our brain detects anything resembling rejection, it rings the same alarm bells as physical pain. No joke. Studies show that the brain processes social rejection in the same regions that handle physical injury. That weird chest ache after an awkward interaction? Yeah. Your brain thinks you've been punched. So when you feel inadequate because your friend didn't laugh at your joke, or your partner seemed distracted, or your coworker didn't invite you to lunch, it's not vanity. It's biology. Now here's where it gets twisted. Because of this bias, your brain collects negative experiences like they're rare Pokemon. But it treats positive ones like common lint, easy to ignore, no need to catalog. You can have 100 "I did okay" moments, but you'll obsess over the one "I messed up" slip. This isn't just inconvenient. It's destructive. Especially when paired with overgeneralization. That's when you take one mistake and make it a blanket truth. "I forgot that deadline" becomes "I'm irresponsible." "I got nervous during the meeting" becomes "I'm terrible at communication." "I burned dinner" becomes "I'll die alone with a smoke alarm as my only companion." Open academic debate time. Some psychologists argue that negative self-talk is adaptive, it pushes us to improve. Others say it reinforces shame cycles and undermines motivation. Honestly, I think it's both, depending on the tone. There's a difference between "you can do better" and "you're a failure." One invites growth. The other handcuffs you to fear. And fear is persuasive. You might be running from your own mental buzz, those tiny stings of self-doubt that feel bigger than they are because your nervous system is primed to react. So what do we do with this? First, we stop trying to silence the brain like it's misbehaving. Your brain's negativity isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's trying to protect you. It's just over-caffeinated and kind of dramatic. Second, we retrain attention. Instead of fixating on what's wrong, we start noticing what's okay. Not perfect. Just okay. Like, "My hair's kind of doing a thing today." "I got through that meeting without spacing out." "I answered that email I've been avoiding for 6 days and didn't burst into flames." Small wins. Tiny validations. They add up, if you let them. But the catch? You have to notice them. When you're hardwired to look for problems, peace can feel boring. Or fake. Or suspicious. You might even reject compliments, success, or kindness because they don't align with the self-image your brain has curated. The one who's always trying to measure up. But let me offer you this. You don't have to be at war with your brain. You just have to learn to talk back. Not in a mean, "shut up, brain" kind of way. More like, "Oh, I see you panicking because I flubbed that sentence. Thanks for trying to protect me. But I'm okay. We're okay." It feels silly at first. I know. But internal dialogue is real, and it shapes how we relate to ourselves. Imagine if a friend texted you after a rough day and you replied, "Wow, you're such a failure. I can't believe you did that." You'd lose that friend instantly. But we say things like that to ourselves every single day. Time to stop. Time to treat your thoughts like suggestions, not facts. Time to stop believing everything your ancient, overprotective survival brain throws at you. Because guess what? You're not inadequate. You're just running software built for cave people. And you're trying to run it in the age of email, dating apps, and oat milk. You deserve a little grace. I was 3 scrolls deep into a vacation Instagram post when it hit me. Why does this stranger's beach sunset make me feel like a failure? Like, seriously. It's someone I don't even know. They're holding a pineapple drink, wearing linen pants, standing in golden hour light like they're part of a secret society of glowy, fulfilled humans. Meanwhile, I'm on my couch, in the same hoodie I've worn since Wednesday, eating cereal out of a mug because all the bowls are dirty. And suddenly, boom, there it is. That familiar twinge, I'm behind. I'm not doing life right. Social media, man. It's the world's biggest comparison machine. And for a brain already primed with insecurity, it's like pouring lemon juice on an open wound. Your brain doesn't fully grasp that what you're seeing online is curated. It registers images emotionally before it processes them logically. So while part of you knows that photo took 43 tries, a filter, and maybe a rented yacht, you still feel like your real, messy life doesn't measure up. This is what I call the funhouse mirror effect. You look into social media thinking it'll reflect your place in the world. But instead, it warps reality, makes other people's joy look enormous and your joy microscopic. And you? You start thinking, everyone else is thriving. What's wrong with me? Nothing. You're just being exposed to an artificially perfect highlight reel while living in the behind the scenes of your own life. Human intelligence evolved for face-to-face communication. Tone, expression, context. Now we're decoding entire lives through captions and emojis, and our emotional brains are confused. There's an open academic debate about how social media impacts mental health. Some argue it's just a tool, others say it rewires our self-esteem and attention spans in deeply damaging ways. I don't think it's inherently evil. I just think it's too powerful for how unguarded we are when we scroll. Think about it. Would you willingly walk into a room full of models, CEOs, world travelers, and motivational speakers and let them talk over each other while you sat there in your pajamas? No? Well, that's what scrolling through your feed at 11:37 p.m. does. And your brain reacts accordingly. A similar fact, flamingos aren't actually pink, they're born gray. Their pink color comes from eating shrimp and algae. Translation: they become beautiful by digesting their environment. You, on the other hand, might be digesting comparison, subtle shaming, and toxic positivity every time you open an app. And what you consume, you become. So how do we break the spell? Here's what helped me. 1. The 5-second gut check. Before you scroll, ask, what am I looking for right now? Connection? Inspiration? Distraction? If the answer is, to feel better about myself, step away. That's not what it's built for. 2. Curate your feed like a garden. Unfollow anything that makes your nervous system tense. Follow people who show their process, not just their polish. 3. Post like you're not selling anything. No need to craft a persona. Just show up. Authenticity is the antidote to aesthetic overload. And most of all? 4. Remember that your worth isn't up for public vote. Seriously. You don't need likes to prove you exist. Or approval to earn rest. Or comments to validate your joy. I had to learn that the hard way. There was a season where I treated social media like a scoreboard. More likes equals more proof I was doing life right. But the thing about chasing approval? It's a treadmill with no off switch. Even when I hit milestones, more followers, more engagement, I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt the pressure to keep going. Keep performing. Keep pretending. That's the trap. Social media rewards the performance of self, not the reality of self. And if you're not careful, you'll lose track of which one you are. Human intelligence includes emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and regulate our inner world. But we can't regulate what we don't recognize. And most of us scroll in autopilot mode, unaware of the tiny, repeated hits to our confidence. So here's your weird homework. Take a day off. One full day. No scrolling. No checking. Just you and your thoughts. You might feel bored. Or twitchy. Or like you've been unplugged from the matrix. Good. That's the sound of your nervous system rebooting. You might even find, under the noise, there's a still, quiet voice that says, "You're okay. Right now. Just as you are." And that voice? It matters more than 1,000 likes. Because while the internet shows you what to envy, your intuition shows you what to heal. You're not behind. You're not less. You're just living a life that doesn't come with filters or captions. And that's brave. Let me tell you something that sounds noble but is secretly destroying your peace. It's this little whisper that says, you can be better. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't that a good thing? Self-improvement is like half of Instagram and 98% of every podcast ever. Get up earlier. Drink green stuff. Master your morning. Read books while you sleep. Hustle harder. Heal your inner child by Tuesday. Look, I'm not against growth. Growth is beautiful. But there's a difference between evolving and attacking yourself in disguise. This is where ambition quietly becomes self-aggression. It happened to me during one of those New Year, New Me spirals. I made a list of everything I wanted to change. It started out normal: eat healthier, exercise more, sleep earlier. But by the end, it looked like I was trying to become a Buddhist monk, an Olympic athlete, and a billionaire, all before Valentine's Day. And every time I didn't meet one of those goals, I didn't just feel behind, I felt ashamed. Because in my head, I wasn't just trying to grow. I was trying to erase myself. The version of me who got tired, who binge-watched cooking shows, who didn't always speak up. I thought that version had to die in order for better me to be born. That's not self-improvement. That's self-rejection with a productivity app. Human intelligence includes metacognition, the ability to think about your own thoughts. But here's the glitch: metacognition without compassion becomes mental bullying. You think you're being disciplined, but you're actually being cruel. There's open academic debate about whether discipline alone can drive long-term behavioral change. Some researchers say it's enough. Others argue that without emotional regulation and self-acceptance, discipline leads to burnout and shame. You know what I think? If you need to hate yourself into change, it's not really change. It's punishment. Another fact: lobsters never stop growing. They just molt, shed their hard outer shell and grow a new one. It's messy, vulnerable, and painful. But it's natural. Real change? It's more lobster than launch plan. It looks like being uncomfortable in your old shell, slowly outgrowing habits that no longer fit, and letting your soft parts be seen while you figure out the next layer. But we don't like that kind of change. It's not flashy. It doesn't sell. So we opt for the 30-day plans, the bullet journals, the morning miracle routines. We chase the illusion that if we just optimize hard enough, we'll finally become someone worthy of rest. It's a lie. You don't need to be better to deserve peace. You don't need to be more productive to deserve love. You don't need to be constantly upgrading to be valid. Sometimes the most radical growth is saying, I'm tired. I'm allowed to rest. Or, I'm scared. And I'm going to try anyway. Or even, this is who I am today, and that's okay. I had to learn that the hard way. There was a phase in my life when I tried to self-help my way into a new personality. I read the books. I made the spreadsheets. I tracked habits like a robot in a lab. And it worked, for a while. But beneath the surface was this constant anxiety. Don't mess it up. Don't slip. Don't go back. It wasn't peace. It was perfectionism in a wellness hoodie. The truth? You don't need to become a better version of yourself. You need to become more yourself. And yes, that includes growth. But it also includes honesty, slowness, softness. It includes admitting that some days you won't want to hustle. And that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. A friend once asked me, what would it look like if your goals came from love instead of fear? It stopped me cold. Because most of my goals, they were fear-based. Fear of failure. Fear of being left behind. Fear of not being good enough. But love-based goals? Those sound like, I want to move my body because it feels alive. I want to eat well because I care how I feel. I want to create because it brings me joy, not because I need likes. That shift changes everything. Instead of running from your flaws, you move toward your values. Instead of climbing out of shame, you grow out of curiosity. And suddenly, you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're walking beside yourself. That's the kind of change that lasts. The kind that doesn't burn you out or turn you into someone else. The kind that lets you look in the mirror and say, Hey, I know you. You're doing okay. So if you're exhausted from trying to fix yourself, try this instead. Be with yourself. Sit in silence. Notice what hurts. Name what's real. Let yourself feel whatever needs feeling. And from that place, not shame, not hustle, not panic, ask, what would love do next? That's where real transformation begins. There was a day, not too long ago, when I sat in the middle of a perfectly clean apartment, sipping herbal tea, surrounded by candles that smelled like adjectives: calm, focus, sunrise. I had journaled. I had meditated. I had even, God help me, vision boarded. And I still felt hollow. That was the day I realized something unsettling. I wasn't improving myself. I was trying to delete myself. I had been chasing this illusion that there would be a day, someday, when I'd finally arrive. Like I'd wake up and just be done. Healed. Whole. No more spirals. No more imposter syndrome. Just pure, unfiltered competence and zen-like energy forever. Spoiler alert, that day never came. See, the myth of being fixed is seductive. It tells you that your current struggles are temporary glitches, that your self-worth is a puzzle you just haven't finished yet. That if you do enough inner work, read enough books, recite enough affirmations, you'll become the kind of person who never doubts themselves again. But here's the truth I had to choke down like bad kale. There is no final version of you. There is only the now version. And the next version. And the version after that, shaped by mistakes, growth, joy, boredom, and breakups with both people and identities. Human intelligence includes pattern recognition, our ability to learn, adapt, evolve. But it also tricks us into believing in end points, finish lines, emotional graduation ceremonies. There's an open academic debate about whether the idea of a fully healed self is even psychologically sound. Some say it's motivational, others say it sets up impossible expectations that deepen shame when progress stalls. Me? I think we've been sold a carrot on a stick. Odd fact, jellyfish have no brain. None. Yet they've survived for over 500 million years. They just float, react, and go with the current. Meanwhile, we, with our frontal lobes and morning routines, spend decades trying to fix ourselves into perfection. Maybe the jellyfish is onto something. I used to think healing meant becoming better, stronger, shinier, less anxious. Now I think healing means becoming more honest, more present, more okay with the days that don't sparkle. Because guess what? Even the best version of you will still forget passwords, still overthink texts, still cry at random commercials, still feel awkward at parties, still wake up some days and want to stay in bed. You don't grow out of being human. And that's not failure. That's the gig. The myth of the fixed self says that once you do enough, you'll finally feel enough. But that's backwards. The real work is learning to feel enough right now, even if you're still figuring things out. That's terrifying. And freeing. I had a client once, a high-performing, spreadsheet-loving, list-making machine of a human, who told me her goal was to eliminate all emotional reactivity. I blinked. Like all? She nodded, completely serious. I want to be unshakable. What she really meant, underneath all the stoic posturing, was, I want to stop being surprised by my own humanness. She wanted to arrive. But life doesn't hand out final destination stickers. It hands out detours, new questions, weird chapters, and moments that undo you when you least expect it. And that's okay. You're not supposed to be done. You're supposed to be in process. Trying to be done can actually make things worse. Because when you hit a rough patch, instead of saying, this is part of life, you say, what's wrong with me? I thought I was past this. You judge the fall. You shame the slip. You spiral, not just from the problem itself, but from the belief that you shouldn't be having it. Growth doesn't mean you stop struggling. It means you stop seeing struggle as a sign that you're broken. You're not broken. You're becoming. And becoming is messy. Like toddler art messy. Like glittering your soup messy. But it's also gorgeous. Unexpected. Tender. It's a process that doesn't ask you to be flawless, just faithful. To show up. To try again. To tell the truth. Some days that truth will sound like, I'm making progress. Other days it'll sound like, I can't believe I'm still dealing with this. Both are valid. Both belong. Healing isn't a staircase with neat little steps. It's more like a spiral staircase. You circle the same lessons again and again, but from a slightly higher perspective each time. I've learned to respect that spiral. To stop asking, why am I here again? And start asking, what can I see from here now that I couldn't before? That shift alone has saved me from 1,000 breakdowns. Because the goal isn't to become a perfectly polished human who never doubts, cries, or panics in a Trader Joe's aisle. The goal is to be a human who can hold all of that, and still know they're worthy of love. You don't need to finish healing to start living. You don't need to stop hurting to feel joy. You don't need to arrive. You just need to keep walking. And sometimes, float like a jellyfish. Let's talk about that little habit you have of keeping score. You know the one. Every time something good happens to someone else, your brain whispers, they're winning, so you must be losing. It doesn't matter if it's your best friend getting engaged, your coworker getting promoted, or some stranger on TikTok turning their cat into a millionaire brand ambassador. Your gut reaction isn't always joy. It's something closer to a sinking feeling in your chest, like you just dropped 2 points in a game you didn't know you were playing. That's comparison, and it's sticky, sneaky, and deeply wired into your brain. See, human intelligence isn't just logic and memory. It's emotional evaluation, too. And one of the things we're really good at is tracking relative status. In evolutionary terms, knowing where you stood in the group helped you survive. High status meant safety, resources, mating opportunities. Low status meant, well, you were lion food. Fast forward to now. No lions, but plenty of LinkedIn promotions. And your brain still treats every success around you like it's a threat. Most of the time, comparison doesn't even motivate you. It paralyzes you. Instead of being inspired by someone's progress, you feel ashamed of your own pace. Instead of asking, how can I learn from that? You ask, what's wrong with me? In the same way, maybe your growth isn't visible in the same colors or timelines as someone else's. But it's happening. There's an open academic debate around whether comparison is a necessary evil or a mental virus. Some say it fuels ambition, others say it corrodes well-being. Honestly, it depends on how you wield it. If comparison is a mirror, then it should reflect possibility, not inadequacy. But for most of us, it becomes a weapon we turn inward. I used to compare myself constantly, especially to people in my field. I'd read someone else's writing and immediately think, why even bother? They already said it better. I'd see someone launching a course or writing a book and spiral into a pit of self-doubt. That should be me. Why isn't it me? What am I doing wrong? And the worst part? I didn't even want some of the things they had. I just hated feeling like I was losing. Comparison robs you of your own compass. You start chasing things that were never yours to begin with. You say yes to paths that don't fit. You build a life designed to impress the very people who make you feel small. That's not ambition. That's emotional piracy. So, what do we do? First, notice your triggers. Who do you compare yourself to the most? What's the story your brain tells you when you see them succeed? Is it, they're ahead, so you must be behind? Or, they're better, so you must be worse? Just noticing that pattern already loosens its grip. Second, interrupt the narrative. When your brain starts the scoreboard monologue, pause and ask, what if I'm not behind? What if I'm on a completely different map? Third, celebrate without collapsing. Someone else's win doesn't cancel out your value. It doesn't shrink your timeline. It doesn't say anything about you. It's just proof that good things are possible. One of the best shifts I ever made was turning comparison into curiosity. Instead of saying, why them? I started asking, what's their why? Why did they choose that path? What matters most to them? And then I asked, what matters most to me? That realignment saved me from chasing the wrong dreams. Because not every mountain is yours to climb. Not every spotlight is meant for you. And not every timeline is your deadline. Sometimes the people you're comparing yourself to are running a completely different race. And guess what? Even they feel it too. You think the person you envy has it all figured out? They don't. They're probably looking at someone else thinking, why can't I be more like them? It's a mirror maze with no exit. But you can step out of it. Here's something I do now when comparison creeps in. I say, I bless their path, and I return to mine. It sounds woo-woo. Maybe it is. But it works. Because it reminds me that I have a path. One that doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be valid. You don't need to be the best. You just need to be yours. And no one else can do that job. You are the only person who can live your life, with your pain, your joy, your fingerprints on the world. You don't have to prove you're winning. You just have to keep showing up. Because your value isn't in what you produce or achieve. It's in how fully you inhabit the space that only you can fill. So the next time your brain pulls out the invisible scoreboard, remember, you're not losing. You're learning. You're moving. You're becoming. And that's more than enough. There's a question I used to ask myself a lot, usually around 2 a.m., under the harsh glow of fridge light, holding a spoonful of peanut butter like it was a microphone. Why do I always feel like I'm behind in life? Not just late. Not just slow. But behind, like the game started without me, and now I'm stuck trying to catch up with people who got a cheat code I never received. You've felt it too, haven't you? That low-grade anxiety humming in the background while you scroll past another engagement, another promotion, another flawless photo dump from someone's trip to Santorini. And somewhere inside, a quiet voice goes, you're not where you're supposed to be. Let's talk about that. Because here's the hard truth. There is no supposed to. There's no universal map. No master clock in the sky that declares you must be married by 30, wealthy by 35, fulfilled by 40, and a motivational speaker by 50. That timeline? It's made up. It's a cultural construction, patched together from TV shows, Instagram trends, parental expectations, and capitalist fantasies. Human intelligence includes our ability to create narratives, stories that help us make sense of our lives. But sometimes those stories become traps. Because when you believe there's a right path, every deviation feels like failure. There's an open academic debate about the developmental milestones we're expected to hit, and whether those benchmarks reflect actual well-being. Spoiler, they don't. One person's late bloomer is another person's on time. Living that way? It's exhausting. And unproductive. And weirdly masochistic. But I get it. I used to think life was like a board game, everyone moving spaces at the same pace, with clear rules and order. But at some point, I realized I wasn't playing a board game. I was in a jungle. And in the jungle, there are no maps. Only instincts. Only what you notice, what you learn, what you carry. So let's dismantle the myth of the right path. Because you know what's more important than being on time? Being true. Being awake. Being present. Being real. And being real sometimes means admitting, I have no idea what I'm doing. I once worked with a woman in her 50s who told me, I thought I'd have it all figured out by now. But every time I think I've arrived, the world shifts again. And I just smiled. Because the secret is, nobody arrives. Not really. Even the people who seem like they have it together? They're improvising. They're winging it. They're dealing with their own invisible hurricanes. You're not behind. You're just on your own schedule. A slower pace doesn't mean you're lazy. It might mean you're paying attention. A longer route doesn't mean you're lost. It might mean you're choosing a path with better views. You are not a product to be optimized. You are a person to be experienced. And your life isn't a timeline. It's a mosaic. All those pieces, the detours, the pauses, the breakdowns, the unexpected wins, They don't mean you're off track. They are the track. The very things you think disqualify you? They're actually the ingredients of wisdom. Because the people who got everything fast? They often struggle to appreciate it. But those of us who've had to wrestle for every inch of peace, we don't take it for granted. We savor it. We feel it in our bones. We wear our growth like a tattoo. There was a moment last year when I realized I'd finally stopped trying to catch up. I wasn't there yet, whatever there means, but I wasn't sprinting anymore. I was walking, breathing, trusting. And that trust? It changed everything. It meant I could celebrate someone else's success without making it about my failure. It meant I could rest without guilt. It meant I could stop needing to prove I was worth something, and just be someone. You don't need to rush your way into a version of success that doesn't even fit you. You just need to be here, now, and trust that your life is unfolding in the way it needs to, even if it looks nothing like anyone else's. Because being on time is less important than being in alignment. And alignment doesn't follow clocks. It follows courage. So here's your permission slip. To slow down. To not have the answers. To take a nap instead of taking a course. To heal in weird, nonlinear ways. And to know that you are not behind. You're just in a chapter that requires patience. And maybe peanut butter at 2 a.m. Have you ever had that moment where someone compliments you, really compliments you, and instead of soaking it in, you flinch like they just threw a brick? Hey, you did an amazing job on that. And your brain instantly goes, they're just being nice. They don't mean it. If they knew the truth. Yeah. That's not modesty. That's self-sabotage dressed in a polite sweater. Let's talk about why receiving is so hard. Because feeling inadequate isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and charming and disguised as humility. You deflect praise. You minimize success. You act like you're lucky instead of talented. You treat your own effort like an accident. And it's not because you're trying to be fake, it's because somewhere deep down, you believe you don't deserve it. That's the rot at the center of self-worth issues, the disbelief in your own enoughness. Human intelligence includes something called self-concept, our mental image of who we are. It's not always accurate. In fact, most people carry a warped mirror around in their heads, reflecting a version of themselves that's stuck in time, frozen in the failures they haven't forgiven. There's an open academic debate about how much of self-concept is shaped by early experiences versus ongoing behavior. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it just bad group projects from middle school that haunt us forever? Honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it can change, but only if we're willing to update the story. Here's an odd fact to consider. Octopuses have 3 hearts. 2 pump blood to the gills, 1 to the rest of the body. And when they swim, the heart that serves the body actually stops beating. That's right, movement costs them, physically. Kind of poetic, isn't it? You, too, might have been taught that staying still is safe. That standing out is dangerous. That shining might cost you love. So you swim carefully. You downplay your light. You shrink yourself to fit into the narrative that kept you protected for years. But now, that narrative is suffocating you. When I first started writing publicly, I couldn't read praise without cringing. Every compliment felt like a setup. Like I'd soon be exposed as an imposter, a fluke, someone who lucked into saying something smart once. It wasn't until a close friend said, "You know, at some point you're gonna have to accept that you're actually good at this," that it hit me. Not because I believed it instantly, but because I realized how resistant I was to believing it. Here's the thing. When you've built your identity on being not quite enough, success doesn't feel like success. It feels like a threat. It threatens the sad little throne your insecurity has been sitting on for years. It challenges the inner critic who's kept you company like a bad roommate. And so, instead of expanding, you sabotage. You turn down opportunities. You say things like, "I'm not ready yet." You wait for permission that no one's actually withholding. You act like confidence is something that has to be given to you by others, when in reality it's something you claim. Receiving, whether it's love, praise, support, rest, is an act of rebellion for people who've been taught they don't deserve much. So if that's you, here's a baby step. The next time someone compliments you, say, "Thank you." That's it. No qualifiers. No jokes. No, "Oh, this old thing?" Just receive it. And if it feels awkward, that's fine. You're learning a new language. The language of enough. Practice saying things like, "Yeah, I worked hard on that. I'm proud of it. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm still learning, but I'm glad it helped you." You're not bragging. You're telling the truth. Because downplaying your brilliance doesn't make you humble. It makes you unreachable, even to yourself. You start ghosting your own potential. And here's the kicker: people can't give you what you won't accept. If love bounces off your shame, you'll never feel truly seen, even when you are. So what if we practice believing the good stuff? What if you let it land, the praise, the warmth, the belonging? What if the real work isn't becoming better, but believing you're already worthy of better? That's not a self-help poster. That's neuroscience. Your brain literally rewires itself based on repetition. Every time you let yourself receive kindness, you carve a new neural path. One that says, "This is safe. This is allowed. This is mine." And slowly those paths replace the old ones that said, "Be small. Be invisible. Be grateful you got anything at all." You are not an accident. You are not a placeholder. You are not waiting to become someone else before your life gets good. You're here. Right now. Already enough. Receiving is scary. But not receiving is lonelier. So try it. Open your hands. Let the light in. Let it stay a little longer this time. You might be surprised at how much easier life feels when you stop dodging the love trying to reach you. I remember standing in the shower once, water running, shampoo forgotten mid-lather, and thinking, what if this is as good as it gets? Not in a dramatic, Oscar-winning monologue kind of way. More like a quiet, unsettling question that landed in my gut and refused to leave. It came after a week of constant hustle. I'd finished a big project, crossed off a bunch of goals, even got a few nice messages from people saying how much my work meant to them. By all external standards, I was doing well. And yet, I felt flat. Like someone had turned the saturation down on my life. That's the weird thing about self-worth. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers, "Not enough," every time the room goes quiet. This moment taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. Achievement doesn't fill the hole. If you've built your value on being productive, successful, or impressive, you already know this. The win feels good, for like 30 seconds. Then the bar moves. The silence returns. The "now what?" creeps in. That's because success without self-connection is just performance. You hit your goals. But you don't feel them. You chase applause. But it doesn't stick. And then you wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be happy? Well, maybe because you're trying to solve an identity wound with external gold stars. Spoiler, that math doesn't work. Human intelligence includes metacognition, our ability to think about our own thoughts. But often we use that power to criticize instead of understand. To spiral instead of ground. There's an open academic debate about the link between extrinsic motivation, rewards, praise, likes, and long-term well-being. Many argue that we've trained a generation to seek validation before authenticity. To feel worthy only after a performance. That's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to untangle. One fact is, koalas have fingerprints nearly identical to humans. So similar, in fact, that they contain crime scenes. That's right, somewhere out there is a koala with plausible deniability. It's funny, but also kind of profound. Because it reminds us, you can look like someone else on the surface and still have a wildly different core. Just like you can look fine to the world and still feel hollow inside. So what do we do when achievement isn't enough? We shift from proving to experiencing. We stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" and start asking, "Am I connected to what I'm doing?" There was a stretch of my life where I did everything right on paper, hit the deadlines, climbed the ladder, collected shiny metrics. But I was numb, joyless, detached from myself. It wasn't burnout. It was disconnection. I didn't need more rest. I needed more realness. More soul in my schedule. More space to feel what I was feeling instead of constantly performing okayness. So I did something wild. I started celebrating things that weren't achievements. Like waking up without dread. Like saying no to something that didn't align. Like laughing out loud when no one was around to hear it. Small things. But deeply me things. And over time, I started to trust my worth again, not because I accomplished something flashy, but because I existed through the quiet. I remembered that I am not a product. I am a process. And the point of life isn't just to win it, it's to feel it. Here's what I know now. You are not your output. You are not your salary. You are not your likes or followers or inbox zero score. You are how you treat yourself when no one's watching. You are how you speak to your heart when it's tired. You are how often you let yourself just be. So if you're chasing the high of achievement, and it's never enough, maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's about coming home to yourself. That might sound cheesy. But it's the kind of cheese that nourishes, like a grilled cheese on a cold day when nothing else makes sense. Try this. Next time you finish a task or hit a milestone, don't rush to the next thing. Pause. Breathe. Ask, did I do this from love or from fear? If it's love, you'll feel proud, regardless of the outcome. If it's fear, you'll feel hungry for more, even if you succeeded. And that difference? It's everything. Because living from fear makes your life a treadmill. Living from love? That's a path. One with rest stops, and scenic overlooks, and weird detours that still somehow bring you home. You don't need to hustle for worthiness. You already have it. Now the real work is remembering. You ever sit in a room full of people, nodding along, smiling politely, maybe even laughing at the right times, and yet feel like you're wearing someone else's skin? Like if someone looked too closely, they'd realize you were a walking forgery? Yeah. That's imposter syndrome. And it's the emotional equivalent of trying to run a marathon with your shoelaces tied together. Let's break this down. Imposter syndrome isn't just self-doubt. It's a persistent belief that you're a fraud, despite evidence to the contrary. Even when you succeed, you chalk it up to luck, timing, or people overestimating your abilities. It's not, I have room to grow. It's, I don't belong here at all. You might even feel like you're sneaking past the guards of your own life, waiting for someone to tap your shoulder and say, sorry, we made a mistake. You're not supposed to be here. It's like living with the fear of being found out, by people who already accepted you. And the worst part? You don't have to be underqualified to feel this way. In fact, imposter syndrome is most common in high achievers. People who've done the thing, and still feel like they faked their way through it. That's the trap. Human intelligence includes metacognitive awareness, the ability to reflect on our performance. Ironically, the more capable you are, the more aware you become of what you don't know. So you start doubting yourself, thinking, if I can see my flaws, others must too. But that's not truth, it's just perspective. There's an open academic debate around the roots of imposter syndrome. Is it psychological? Cultural? Gendered? Systemic? Spoiler, yes, and oh, definitely yes. Society doesn't hand out confidence evenly. Some of us have to build it from scratch, while others get it sewn into their school uniforms. Here's an odd fact. Sea cucumbers can liquefy their own bodies to squeeze through tight spaces. Literally melt, crawl, and then re-solidify. Imagine having that kind of flexibility, emotionally. Actually, don't. It's gross. But also, it's kind of how imposter syndrome makes you feel. Squishy. Formless. Adaptable to everyone but yourself. When I first started speaking publicly, I'd get off stage and spiral. People would say, "That was amazing!" And I'd think, they're just being polite. I rambled. I forgot a key point. My voice shook. I used like too many times. Meanwhile, they genuinely meant it. They weren't handing out compliments like participation trophies. They were moved. But I couldn't believe it. Because I didn't believe me. And that's the core of imposter syndrome, a gap between how you're perceived and how you perceive yourself. It's not just insecurity, it's dissonance. You look successful on the outside. But inside? You're frantically flipping through a manual labeled How to Be a Real Human. And the pages are all in wingdings. So the good news is, you're not broken. You're just afraid. Afraid of disappointing people. Afraid of not living up to the hype. Afraid that your best won't be good enough. But those fears, they're human. And they don't make you unworthy, they make you aware. What changed for me was this realization. Imposter syndrome thrives in silence. It loves secrecy. It wants you to smile while you crumble. To pretend while you panic. To isolate instead of reaching out. So the antidote? Connection. The moment I started telling friends, "Hey, I feel like I'm faking it," something wild happened. They said, "Me too." Not just once. Over and over. People I admired. People I thought had it all together. Turns out, they were just better at hiding it. That broke the spell. Because if everyone feels like a fraud, then maybe none of us are. Maybe we're just brave enough to keep showing up despite the fear. And that's not fraudulence. That's courage. So let's rewrite the narrative. Imposter syndrome doesn't mean you're unqualified. It means you're growing. It means you're stepping into rooms your former self couldn't have imagined. It means you care about doing well, not because you're afraid, but because you respect the work. You don't have to feel confident to be competent. Confidence is a lagging indicator. It shows up after the reps, not before. So if you're in that place, walking into meetings with shaky hands, hitting send, with a stomach full of butterflies sitting at the table while your inner voice says, "You're the least smart one here," know this. You belong. Not because you're perfect. But because you're present. Because you're doing the work, learning the ropes, and daring to stay. Try this, next time the voice says, "You don't belong here." Respond with, "Okay, but I'm here anyway." Not defiance. Not arrogance. Just quiet, steady truth. Because confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to keep showing up with it. You are not a fraud. You are just growing faster than your inner critic can keep up. And eventually, even that voice will get tired. And you'll hear something softer underneath it. A whisper that says, "You've got this." There's this moment I think about a lot. I was sitting in a quiet coffee shop, sunlight pouring through the window like a movie set, jazz humming in the background, overpriced latte in hand. You'd think it was peaceful. A perfect day. And yet, inside my brain, complete chaos. I was staring at my to-do list, overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time. Everything felt urgent, but nothing felt meaningful. Like I was moving, but not going anywhere. You know that feeling? That's when I realized I wasn't tired because I had too much to do. I was tired because I'd been carrying the weight of who I thought I had to be. The perfect version. The always composed one. The version of me that never disappoints, never falls behind, never needs help. It was exhausting. Human intelligence includes executive functioning, the brain's ability to plan, prioritize, and regulate actions. But even the best executive system breaks down under chronic pressure to perform okayness for the world 24/7. That day, I didn't need a productivity hack. I needed permission to be unfinished. There's an open academic debate on whether perfectionism is adaptive or maladaptive. Some argue it drives excellence. Others say it feeds anxiety and shame. I'll tell you this from experience. When perfection becomes your baseline, nothing feels like enough. Not even your best. And here's the kicker. Perfectionism isn't about being perfect. It's about avoiding shame. You work hard so no one criticizes you. You over-prepare so you don't feel exposed. You put pressure on yourself, hoping it will protect you from disappointment. But guess what? you still get criticized. You still feel exposed. You still get disappointed. Because life isn't a math test, you don't get points for showing your work and checking all the boxes. It took me years to admit that I was addicted to approval. Not because I wanted praise, but because I didn't trust myself without it. I measured my worth by how useful I was. How dependable. How low maintenance. I didn't want to be a burden. But in doing that, I became invisible to myself. Me? I was trying to survive by anticipating everyone else's expectations and beating myself to the punch. And that's not living. That's emotional calculus. So I started practicing something radical. Something soft. Something I had once considered weak. Self-compassion. Now, before your eyes roll so hard they knock over your coffee, stay with me. Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about treating yourself like someone you love, even when you mess up. It's the voice that says, "Yeah, that was hard. And it's okay. You're still worthy." Not every mistake requires a trial. Not every delay needs to be punished. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to yourself is, "This is tough. And I'm doing my best." So, here's what I started doing on those days when inadequacy tried to hijack the wheel. 1. I asked myself better questions. Not, "Why can't I get this right?" But, "What's actually making this hard today?" 2. I practiced the 24-hour rule. When I felt like a failure, I gave myself 24 hours before making a judgment. Emotions are data, not always truth. 3. I reminded myself, I am not a machine. I can be brilliant and tired. Whole and healing. Learning and unlearning, all at once. One of the most soul-freeing things you can do is stop treating life like a test you can fail. There's no report card. No permanent record. No cosmic teacher grading your effort with a red pen. There's just you. Trying. Learning. Showing up. And if you need a mantra today, here's one that's helped me. I can hold success and struggle at the same time. That's not contradiction. That's being human. The more I let go of who I thought I had to be, the more I made room for who I already was. Flawed. Yes. Unfinished. Absolutely. But also present. Awake. Growing. You don't need to earn your place in the world by always being perfect. Sometimes your presence is the point. And honestly, that's enough. There's a weird thing that happens when you finally slow down. At first, it feels like relief. Like taking off a pair of shoes that were 2 sizes too small. You breathe. You stretch. You imagine a softer pace. But then, right on schedule, comes the panic. Because in that stillness, you start hearing things you've been drowning out for years. Why don't you like yourself? Why do you talk to yourself like a villain? What if your worth isn't connected to your usefulness? Yikes. You'd think doing less would be freeing. But for a lot of us, slowing down reveals a truth we've avoided. We don't know who we are unless we're fixing something. Helping someone. Achieving. Improving. That's the great identity crisis of the high-functioning inadequate crowd. You look like you've got it all together. But beneath the spreadsheets and emotional availability and perfectly arranged snacks is someone terrified of being still. Because stillness makes room for the question you don't want to answer. Do I like myself when I'm not performing? Human intelligence includes narrative identity, our internal story of who we are. But when that story revolves around doing and pleasing and being useful, you forget how to just be. There's an open academic debate about whether identity is more influenced by internal self-concept or external social roles. The truth? Both. But when the social roles are louder, you become an echo instead of a voice. Odd fact, wombat poop is cube-shaped. That's right. Cubes. Why? Because it helps it not roll away. They use it to mark territory. Weirdly clever. Just like us, building tidy emotional walls, stacking cubes of control, hoping the world doesn't see how messy it actually feels inside. When I finally confronted that stillness, I realized something painful. I didn't like myself unless I was proving something. And worse, I didn't even know myself outside of my productivity. So I started asking uncomfortable questions. Not to punish myself, but to reconnect. What brings me joy that has nothing to do with achievement? How do I speak to myself when no one else is around? Would I want to be friends with me? And yeah, that last one slapped. Because I was kind to strangers, supportive to friends, patient with coworkers. But with myself? You're so lazy. You'll never get it together. Everyone's figuring it out but you. I'd never say that to someone I loved. Yet I served it to myself like cereal every morning. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. Like when you apologize for taking up space. Or dismiss your own needs as too much. Or say, I'm fine, when you're absolutely not. Those tiny betrayals pile up. And before you know it, you're a stranger in your own skin, fluent in criticism, allergic to kindness. So I started rewriting the script. Not with grand affirmations or vision boards, though, hey, do you? But with quiet, boring consistency. Things like noticing when I sighed after reading an email, and asking why. Giving myself a 5-minute break before responding to a mistake. Speaking to myself like I would to a 6-year-old who's learning. And I won't lie, at first, it felt silly. Even fake. But here's what I learned. Self-trust isn't built with feelings. It's built with evidence. You don't have to believe you're enough to start acting like it. You just have to act like someone worth caring for. Eventually, the belief catches up. It's like planting seeds in dry soil. At first, nothing grows. But over time, slowly, quietly, life breaks through. You begin to recognize your voice beneath the noise. Your preferences. Your desires. Your softness. You learn to rest without guilt. To feel without fixing. To exist without performing. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. Vulnerability always is. But it's also where connection lives. Not just with others, but with yourself. If you're feeling lost in who you are, maybe it's not a crisis. Maybe it's a homecoming. A chance to meet the version of you that isn't measured in metrics. The you who laughs alone. Who sings in the car. Who gets excited over silly things like frogs or bread or your favorite hoodie. That version deserves to be here. Not just when they're helpful, but always. You don't need to earn self-acceptance. You just need to start offering it. Little by little. Day by day. Until one morning you wake up, and instead of, "What's wrong with me?" you think, "Hey, it's good to see you again. Let me tell you what I did this morning. I woke up late, like way past the time I said I would. My phone was buried under the pillow, the alarm long defeated. My first thought? Ugh. Typical. You had one job. But then I caught it. That reflex. That automatic meanness. And instead of rolling over and letting the shame spiral start its morning jog, I sat up. I laughed. I said out loud, "Okay, maybe I'm not a robot after all." That tiny moment? That was progress. Because once upon a time, a late start would have ruined my whole day. I'd punish myself by skipping breakfast, working twice as hard, talking to myself like I was on the verge of expulsion from life. But not today. Because here's the thing we never get taught growing up: self-respect is built through forgiveness, not perfection. You can't shame yourself into wholeness. You don't become more valuable by being harder on yourself. You just become more afraid. More rigid. More tired. And yet we do this all the time, don't we? We treat kindness like a reward. Something we earn once we hit the goal, fix the flaw, prove the point. But that's not kindness. That's conditional approval and a fake mustache. Real kindness is showing up for yourself, even when you're disappointed in you. Human intelligence also includes emotional regulation, the ability to notice, manage, and adapt emotional responses. But so many of us were raised in environments where emotions were either too much or completely ignored. So now, as adults, we overcorrect or shut down. There's an open academic debate on whether emotional regulation is more innate or learned. The answer seems to be, we're born with some tools, but life either sharpens or blunts them. And no matter how we start, we can always grow new skills. So why do we treat ourselves like we're dumb when we have a rough day? Let me offer you this. You are allowed to feel joy before things are perfect. You are allowed to rest without proving your productivity. You are allowed to like yourself, even when you're a mess. That's not arrogance. That's healing. For so long, I thought self-worth would arrive when I fixed everything that was wrong with me. And the fixing never ends. There's always something new to critique. What changed my life wasn't finishing the to-do list. It was finally looking at myself and saying, "You're not a problem to solve. You're a person to love." Corny? Sure. But it worked. When you stop treating your flaws like red flags and start seeing them as parts of a very tired, very real human being, something unlocks. You stop chasing worth. And start embodying it. Not every day. Not perfectly. But enough to notice. So, here's where we land. You've been told that feeling inadequate means something's wrong with you. But maybe it means something's right. Maybe it means you're awake. That you're paying attention. That you're brave enough to care about who you are. That's not failure. That's growth. And yes, growth is weird. It's messy and nonlinear. It often looks like regression before it looks like transformation. But it's worth it. Because one day, you'll look back on this version of you, the one who was unsure, anxious, trying so hard, and you'll feel nothing but love. Not because you fixed them, but because you finally saw them clearly. And maybe, just maybe, you'll whisper, "Thank you for surviving long enough to become me." So here we are, friend. At the edge of this very long, very honest story. We've talked about doubt, about shame, about the ache of feeling like you're always behind in a race no one asked you to run. We've sat with that heavy voice in your head that says, "You should be more." And we've asked it gently, "Says who?" And maybe, just maybe, you've started to see what I've come to believe. That you are not a collection of flaws. You are not a delayed success story. You are not behind. You are here. Breathing. Feeling. Trying. That counts. It counts more than you know. Because what if all that stuff you think disqualifies you, the fears, the fumbles, the fatigue, is actually proof that you're still in the game? Still willing to care. Still choosing to show up. That's not weakness. That's courage. So go easy on yourself, okay? The world's already too loud with opinions about who you should be. Let your voice be the one that says, "I'm proud of you anyway." You're not too much. You're not behind. You're just becoming. And that, my friend, is enough. Now go be soft with yourself. You've earned it.